Hello and welcome to FinextraTV. I'm Hannah Wallace and we're here at Money2020 in Las Vegas. With me now is Ellen Iskenderian from Women's World Banking. Ellen, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Very happy to be here.
Great to have you on, and we're discussing inclusion and equality that are really important topics during Money 2020 this year. But before we do, it'd be great to hear a bit about what you're hoping to get out of the event. So let's start there.
Well, this is the first time I've been in person. I think that we've all been in person in a few years, and I am so struck by how many more women there are this year. It's really notable. I think the other, maybe more slightly substantive thing was when I was here in 2019, I was really kind of, underwhelmed by U.S. Fintech in comparison to so much of what we see in the emerging markets. Seemed like it was exclusively about payments. Everybody was doing payments, and payments are important. I don't in any way mean to say they're not. But it just felt like in the emerging markets, Fintech is really addressing problems that people have. It's breaking through barriers that have been keeping people from the financial system. And I just wasn't impressed that that was the case. But it feels like some of that has been addressed. And I'm seeing more digital credit. I've seen some insurance. I've seen, sort of more algorithm-based credit scoring that uses alternative data. So some of the things that I'm so excited about, the opportunities for fintech and financial inclusion, I think have finally made their way to Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I know you'll be on stage speaking a bit about the role of fintech in bridging that digital gap for equality and driving financial equality as well. So walk us through the role. How are you seeing it change there?
Well, part of the reason we're so excited about fintech, both to work, I run an NGO, Women's World Banking, that works with 63 financial service providers around the world. Fully a third of those are fintechs, so we work with a lot of fintechs. But I also lead an impact investment shop, and we have a number of investments directly in financial service providers that are offering their services through financial technology and really aiming to bridge that gap. And so it's a very exciting opportunity, because so many of the things that were barriers that the legacy institutions couldn't seem to, fight their way out of that paper bag, like insisting that all collateral has to be land or real estate, which poor people don't own to begin with, but poor women in particular. In many of the countries we work with, they still can't inherit land. They don't have the right to pledge real estate without their husband's prior approval. Even a property that a woman brings into the marriage in many countries is completely brought under the husband's purview. So, issues like that, credit bureaus, for example, again, most of the developing world only cover about 5% of the economy and only very, very large loans. So most small and medium-sized enterprises, their data isn't even collected, let alone available to be used by lenders who might want to provide capital. So fintech was a way around so many of those things, and I'm very excited to see that some of those are really starting to be applied.
No, it's really interesting, and I'm interested to hear about Women's World Banking's view on what needs to be done here. What's the response, and how can we meet some of those challenges?
Well, I think one of the things that we've started to see, again, primarily in our role as an investor, is that it's really actually enormously gratifying how many fintech founders, both in emerging markets as well as developed country, they kind of came to it out of an inclusion mentality. I want to provide a service that people, for whatever reason, are denied. It's too expensive, they don't have the data, whatever. And that motivation is really wonderful. And you can see it in the seed capital, Series A, maybe even Series B, that they're sticking to that mission and they're really providing access to something that wasn't previously available. But something then starts to happen in the later rounds of capital when capital providers are really pushing for scale. And that's when you really see that move away from inclusion all too often, and it really just becomes about getting a cheaper, faster product to people who already have access. And so the thing that we're really pushing for is to convince more capital providers to maybe see that scale is possible without sacrificing inclusion. and stick with those companies with that initial vision without forcing them into something that wasn't really the direction that they initially wanted to go in.
That's right, because maybe in the past they would have been treated sort of at the other end of the spectrum, right?
Exactly.
So I want to hear a little bit more off the back of that about your FinTech Innovation Challenge at Women's World Banking, and where does that fit in, and what are sort of the benefits?
Well, thank you so much for asking about the FinTech Innovation Challenge. It's one of the things we're really proud of. It'll be our 4th year this year. We've been in partnership with the Singapore FinTech Festival for several years, and they've been really generous in allowing our 2 finalists to go on immediately to the big Hackcelerator Day in Singapore, which is quite an exciting opportunity. But it was really born out of this same idea that I was mentioning before, that so many founders are drawn to the inclusion mission. And so we wanted to draw attention to these companies. We wanted to shine a light on them so that other capital providers, other folks who share that mission and may not be aware of them. So we had a bumper crop this year, 98 qualifying finalists. We had several more, but we wanted to make sure that they were genuinely focused on inclusion. We've put a particular focus on female founders this year, so we'll have a female founders circle, which we're very excited about. And the range of solutions that the companies are looking at is really impressive. So we're not just looking at, there were a lot of credit scoring algorithms in the early days. Today, several embedded finance companies have really identified inclusion opportunities. We've got some insurtechs. We've got some, again, many digital credit. But what I'm excited about is it's not just sort of high-cost consumer credit, but companies that are really looking to serve that underserved and underestimated woman entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, Mary Ellen, there's no doubt we'll definitely have to catch up further down the line and talk more about that, and it's wonderful to hear about what you're doing at Women's World Banking. And thank you very much for taking the time out of the event to come and speak with us.
Thanks so much, Hannah.